indicated before yesterday that given the fact that in 2008 there was a very big attacks, which they were called xenophobic attacks, and we thought we had solved it, stopped it. And early this year, in January in Soweto, once again, we had one. We were talking about the first one as to what was the cause, what was the incident. We sort of, it varied as we met the communities. In Pretoria, for an example, in Mamelodi, really what was more identified was economic interests, that criminals wanted to loot, etc., and then created that kind of a situation. But at the same time, when we met other people in Israel, they were talking about the mine employers who were using the Mozambicans because they would pay them very low because they are not unionized. That started the anger. And therefore there were different reasons why you had it at the time. And we thought we had dealt with the matter. So when it occurred again in Soweto in January, we began to feel that there's a problem. And the Minister of Small Business Development met with the communities and discussed the matter. There's a report that has been concluded. We are still want to see it because we want to see what are the recommendations. But again, there, the information is that it started by a young man who was getting into the shop, and the shop owner thought he was getting in or breaking in to steal, and he shot him. And that's what sparked off the attacks. This one, which is current and just getting to an end, we are told that it started because there was a conflict between employees and employer in Durban, and that led to a strike. That when the workers were striking, then the employer decided to employ the foreign nationals. Now, in terms of the trade unions, they call that scabbing, and they always fight those who come to take their places. It has never caused any attack, generally. But in this case, they then attacked the foreign nationals, and this then started the problem of attacks. So we can identify that there were specific incidents that started this. But this one in particular assumed a very slightly different kind of thing. It looked like it was being, in a sense, directed somehow. Immediately spread to Gauteng, and I'm sure people, you in particular guys, know the details of what happened. As government, we felt therefore that this is not going to be helpful, because we don't want this to occur again, because it certainly gives a bad name to all of us. Because firstly, we are not xenophobic, but what comes out there is that South Africans are xenophobic. The majority of the South Africans are not xenophobic, only a few who are. And even then, they may be making excuses of certain things. So we started a discussion within government to say, we don't want this to come again. What then can we do? Initially, as it started, we appointed a small group of ministers to deal with the issue, and later enhanced that committee to include other departments. But as they were concluding, having succeeded to stop the wave of violence, we began to discuss why these attacks. What can we do to ensure that this does not happen again? So as government, we discussed a plan, how to handle this, partly emerging from what other people say are the causes. these attacks. And we felt that after this one has gone off, unlike in other times, we are going to embark on a program to address the issues that need to be addressed, emanating from the papers, those who are illegal, regularizing the papers and everything, dealing with the small business, how the businesses themselves should be regularized. How do we deal with areas that people say they become centers of drug dealing, whatever, so that we clean up the situation? So there's a plan. And as government, we felt we couldn't do that alone. We need the entire country to participate. And therefore felt that we need to consult with stakeholders. The first was day before yesterday, where we met business, labor, civil society, and government to discuss what we need to do. Firstly, inviting their own views, telling them what is our thinking, what we want to do, because we don't want this to occur again. What are their own contributions? Indeed, they made their contributions. And we also said we need, therefore, organizations that represents the African diaspora. And therefore, we set up this meeting today. Thought it was very important that we should have this meeting. Again, not just us as South Africans dealing with what we need to do, but to say all of us, how do we do this collectively together? We have a plan. Are there any suggestions that could be made? Are there any plans? How do we deal with this matter so that it does not happen again? So we've had a discussion for, I think, almost 5 hours. And there has been a lot of discussions, ranging from different angles of what we think are the causes and why, and what we need to do to address those causes. What are dissatisfaction of those who come here and seek to be assisted in terms of the papers, for an example, etc. They raise their concerns and complaints. There was, in fact, a letter written by one organization called African Diaspora Forum, about 12 points that they've raised, suggestions which were included to other points that have been raised by other organizations, and people gave accounts of their own personal frustrations and things that they've come across, and suggestions what they need government should do in order to ensure that we deal with this issue. With a greater emphasis that I think all of us, the consensus is that the majority of this country are not xenophobic, but there are people, at times criminals, who use the situation for their own ends, and that we should isolate those, and that therefore we need to work together, all of us, and that therefore the representatives that are there today will link up with the committee that we have established, so that all the issues raised will be addressed with no issue left unaddressed. And they will be reporting as to how far do we go. The question which was also asked, what will this committee differ from other committees that have been there before? I'm preempting your questions that we are going to ask. So we've indicated that this one is different. For an example, the discussion about the plan, because this committee that has been set up is not like the committee that was dealing with dousing the fires, but is the committee that is going to deal with the situation going forward. It's the first time that we are therefore consulting at the level at which we are consulting. Also, it's the first time that besides the stakeholders, but we have also called the representatives to be part of this and to link up to the committee so that we are able to implement with very definitive instructions that they will be report backs. How far do we go? So that's going to be the difference. And we are going to attend to the issues that have been raised. That if those issues are not being attended to, they will be able to reach the presidency so that we are able to deal with those matters, because we certainly don't want this to happen again. And I'm just summarizing a lot that has been said, and I'm sure my colleagues will have an opportunity to address you wherever, briefly, each one, on the issues that we talked and what is their own impression, what do they think needs to happen. I'm very happy and satisfied that we had this meeting, because this meeting has been very useful for us to understand the thinking of those who deal with these people on a daily basis, who also know their concerns and complaints. And I think they've been able to represent the African diaspora very well. And therefore we now know what are the issues and what needs to be done. Among the things we did was to give a report about what happened after 2008 attacks. Were there any arrests? Were there any people who were convicted, etc.? And I would like, before they start talking, to allow Minister Hadeb just to give you those details, because I don't think you also had it. They criticized us that we are not reporting, but they were hearing it for the first time. They thought justice in this country is not there. So I would want the minister to do that, and then they will come in one by one and say whatever they think they would want to say on the basis of this meeting. Minister Hadeb.
Thank you, Mr. President. These are the statistics on the cases and convictions on the attacks that happened on foreign nationals covering the period January 2008 to July 2009. And the provinces affected were South Gauteng, Eastern Cape, Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, North Gauteng, and Free State. The number of cases was 79. The number of accused, 132. The number of convictions, 132. Sentence range, cumulatively 104 years, with 1 life sentence and 1 suspended sentence. The offenses were public violence, assault with grievous bodily harm, GBH, housebreaking and theft, robbery, rape, murder, malicious damage to property, intimidation. The sentences for public violence for those accused range between 3 and 6 years imprisonment. For robbery, the sentences range up to 9 years imprisonment that were imposed. Housebreaking, including sentences up to 9 years. Assault and malicious damage to property, 4 years, and intimidation up to 5 years. There were also 4 instances of rape. Sentences range 15 years, 25 years, and life imprisonment in those 4 cases. The current outbreak of violence. There are 5 dedicated courts in KwaZulu-Natal as we speak, with 1 prosecutor and a magistrate with 1 interpreter in each court. There are currently 8 cases on the court roll, with 2 having been finalized. These are these courts: Chatsworth Magistrates Court, Umlazi Magistrates Court, Durban Magistrates Court, Amanzimtoti Magistrates Court, and Zuma Magistrates Court. So that's the end of the statistics.
Thank you so much. My name is Zoe Kongolo. I'm a fond of Africa Unite, based in Cape Town. We had quite fruitful meetings, 5 hours. I know that the president is a busy man, but 5 hours is quite not easy. There was a lot of things we been discussed with the president, but I think that my colleague, they will be able to say some of the things. But one of the things which come out is that for foreign national, they say that next year there will be election in other African countries, DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, and one of the cause who making that more refugees they will come here because there are no democracy in those countries. If in those countries all the president want to change the constitution, and if it couldn't happen, it means that by next year, 2 years, we will have another more refugees coming in the countries. So we, all the members present have give the message to the President Zuma that he must give this message to other African countries when they will meet, that this influx of refugees in Africa must stop. I would like to leave my colleague also time to speak.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. President, thank you very much for the opportunity you gave us. And spending 5 hours with you in a boardroom is not easy. We know that you got a very, very busy schedule. And as a member of the Algerian community in South Africa, a lot of issues have been discussed with the panel of the ministers inside the boardroom, where we discussed the home office issues, where a lot of our foreign nationals got issues and problems, the way they proceed to do them paperwork. And I think Mr. President heard that, and he said that he's going to take that and make sure that the problems are solved. And we also thank the government of South Africa for taking action swiftly against this xenophobia attacks that happened recently in KwaZulu-Natal and Johannesburg, where it wasn't the case in 2008, where a lot of people lost their lives. And just yesterday, I was driving in Kempton Park, where I saw something happening where people have started fighting, and I stopped my car, and in less than 5 minutes, we had more than 8 cars from the police force that came in to solve the problems, and everything went quiet. And thank you again, Mr. President, and I have to leave an opportunity for my friends to come say the rest. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, thank you very much. Today, have been really surprised to have 5 hours what His Excellency listened to everyone one by one. He couldn't get tired. It was a very fruitful meeting. It came up with a very good proposal. After having all that in out as proposals, Mr. President took 12 points, read it on table there, saved as working document. We highly appreciate that, and we are very satisfied, and we don't feel that we have problem. Like everyone agree on the House that small minority of groups maybe can lead it, but the rest of South Africans are not xenophobe. You have seen that in Johannesburg, in a rally of 30,000 people supported us from South Africans. Through you, Mr. President, I would like to thank all South Africans, though they condemn and condemn whatever attacks or violence, and for their support to accommodate some of our brothers. And I would like to, on behalf of Arab community, who fully supporting that initiative, we will be ready to cooperate and work with the Office of His Excellency to implement all that resolutions of today. Thank you.
My name is Mark Bafu. I'm the chairman of the African Diaspora Forum. His Excellency, I would like to use this opportunity to thank you for your commitment and the commitment of government to quell this violence. We knew when we didn't hear from you, we knew that you were thinking about what to do. And we are grateful that today, here, together with the migrant community, we discussed and made some suggestions. You even went further to establish a committee which will work hand in hand with the migrant community to solve the issues down there in our different communities. I want to use the opportunity to thank the South Africans who are now coming out in numbers to say a small group of people cannot embarrass South Africa and they cannot embarrass our continent. It's very important for us to face our challenges and think how we deal with them. So those who think that is by violence are in a minority. And today, with our president, we can see that this small group don't have a place in the society. Government promised that they'll work clockwise to put them where they belong. His Excellency, thank you very much. We will take the message, and to the migrant community, we say they can rest assured that we are working with government to eradicate xenophobia in our society. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, Mr. President. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Bishop Dalton Adams. I represent the Migrant Community Board. I am a South African, and we want to thank God that we are first, before we are South Africans, we are Africans. Before we are Africans, we are all human beings. First and foremost, we want to share our sincere condolences to all the families that have lost the 7 beloved family members. We want to really just come before the nation and say that we are sorry. We also want to stand in repentance as a nation before God and before each other and our brothers and sisters in Africa in particular. We want to call upon our brothers and sisters in South Africa. There are ways, there is means that our government has put in place for us to deal with issues, Mr. President, that we can dialogue. We don't have to go through lengths of violence and looting. We don't have to go and kill each other as brothers and sisters in South Africa. So make a passionate plea to all our people. Let us work together. Let us speak with each other and dialogue with each other. The second point we discussed, which is very critical for us, is that all community leaders, all leaders we must have a bottom-up approach where we engage communities, where we welcome our brothers and sisters, where we have programs and projects in our local communities. We cannot expect government to integrate at local government, at local level. It is the responsibility of community to do that. Our third point that we came to was also a very important point, that all the organizations, the migrant organizations that are represented here today, must form a united force, must come together. And we must not work in silos. We must work together, and then government has one body that they can talk to. But once again, to all South Africans and to all the Africans and to the continent of Africa, we are going to take hands, and we believe that xenophobia will never happen again in our beautiful country. I thank you.
Good afternoon, His to be in front of you at this time, in time where foreigners, nationals, we felt something that was not really wished to be again in this land, because I was here in 2008. Even before then, some situations have been happening then and now. But today, I'm now feeling something else in me, because we've been feeling isolated, but today we are in the hands of government, not because we did not have the papers that government issued since I've been here since 97, but I never feel the hands of government on my shoulder. I'm saying that in our time that we had, issue or a point of South Africa having a best constitution and facing what is we are seeing on the ground, it was really sounding not good, but we came up with some agreement with the government that they are going to be able to translate this beautiful government to the ground, because some of us, they mentioned that we want this constitution to sound on the street, because that is where the crime is taking place, not in the offices, not in the boardroom, and that was agreed upon, and we are happy for that. As a human being talking from social worker perspective, we were responding to some question which meant to be the purpose of the day, where government leadership were asking, what do you think would be the cause of xenophobic attack? Or what can you propose us in order to avoid this in the future? And we, on my side, as a social worker, I've been saying the youth are being misled with the way we deal with the programs. I was saying that when I look at the family institution in South Africa that is going down, no strength in the family, where a child is raised, where a child is given what he needs for him to become a future man, a future wife of someone. We decided to say, okay, we have that situation where we found our kids being in a foster families, but after they become age of majority, those kids become a lost sheep, and they are the ones who are turning into crime. And I think we agreed that something is going to be done, and I think crime is going to be reduced. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. I've waited 65 years to stand next to an African president, and you're the first one. My name is Frank Mlochwa. I'm an advisor to the Association of Malawians in South Africa. I've been around for 21 years. To say that this is the first time to stand next to you is an understatement, because Malawians, we cannot say that Malawians are social integrated in South Africa. Actually, we are embedded in all societies of South Africa, because there's more than 3 generations of Malawians that have been here. And all throughout, we have been treated as part and parcel of the families. So the 2008 xenophobic attacks, after that in 2009-2010, we got a few South African families who now we have since called them Salawians, because they're half South African, half Malawian, who came forward to say, but these xenophobic attacks, they are attacking our own relatives. And from there, we decided to form an NGO, Cascade, which is now trying to deal with identifying South African families that have got Malawian parentage and connecting them with wherever their fathers came from. And it seems it's going to take place. So for us, Your Excellency, is that this meeting has achieved one of the most important aspects, that instead of government to government bilateral, we are here to deal with these issues of xenophobia. And if we are included in the committees that we're talking about, both at higher level and at community level, we're going to play our part. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Your Excellency. My name is Frank Nwari from Rwanda. And I will tell you that, as last Frank said, it's an opportunity that I cannot express, because back in Africa where I come from, irrespective of the situation, because there's no democracy, just being next to a president is just an opportunity of a lifetime. And being next to a president that listens, because I watched him being so patient with all our badges, because when we came, we were telling him everything that was in our hearts, which we do not have, we don't do in our own countries. We come to South Africa to complain, but we cannot even complain in our own countries. And you see, when we heard that Malawians and wherever they are sending buses, now the Rwandan people were saying, there's no any other bus. The ones in Cape Town, for them, they were joking, saying, no, we're next to an ocean, that's the end. We're going to just run to the ocean. Because our situation is so, we try to bring to His Excellency that we do not come here simply because it is a choice. It's not a choice. Back in our countries, it's a life and death situation. You criticize a government or you say anything about your own government or anything, you are dead. You cannot have this luxury I see here in Parliament, red berets, people talking, whoever. You are dead. So those who come from, you have heard of Great Lakes region. Great Lakes region, I mean, it is a disaster as it is. But we are indebted to the South African government, to His Excellency, that the impunity culture that comes from the Great Lakes region, particularly in my country, Rwanda. I mean, I came here as a South African, a Rwandese-sponsored student. Did law at the University of Johannesburg, now formerly Rao. But because I was vocal, I ended up becoming a refugee. My papers cancelled and everything gone. So clearly, we want you to understand as South Africans that coming here is not a choice. At times it is a matter of life and death. That's what, and I'm so pleased that South Africa can have time to listen to us and accommodate us. And we really appreciate that it's not that you are xenophobic. It's just a few elements. I just talked about that at my age, I'm still a refugee. I was born a refugee in Uganda. But when we were in Uganda, for the 20 years I was in Uganda, we were still referred to as Bunyarwanda, these kind of people. So whenever you're in a country for a long time and you get other refugees coming, you always have discontent in that country. So we're asking His Excellency and the government to see that they talk to other leaders, to create institutions like South Africa, whereby you can solve issues by just talking. So let me not take the whole day trying to explain my situation. Your Excellency, thank you so much once again. I'm so glad that we had this meeting. Thank you.
Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président, because they speak French also. Why I say so? I'm Reverend Thomas René Kitutu Zikosi. I live in South Africa for 20 years now, and I came here, I resigned from South Africa, the time of Mobutu Sese Seko, to come to what the president and what we explained to him. I came here, or I ran in South Africa when I was coming straight from Japan to study Japanese language. And I was thinking that my future will be bright. But during the time of change, Mobutu stick to power, and Tshisekedi wanted to come in, and we become enemy each other with my boss and so on. To cut the story short, it's just to show you that we came here, South Africa become our country. We love so much South Africa, and I said that I'm the international president of Christians for Peace in Africa, and I'm humbly the chairperson of the Johannesburg Migration Advisory Panel of the city of Johannesburg. What the president at his high level, and I was saying when I was praying this morning, I said that prophetically, the president canceled his travel to Jakarta. Instead of going to Jakarta, he said that no, I must solve the problem of migration in South Africa. I don't call it a xenophobic attack because most of you call something by name, it becomes big. But when you undermine it, it becomes so small. And I thank His Excellency President to back up what we are doing at the city of Johannesburg for a long time, for 8 years now. But by him sending the message, and as I said, to say what the late Madiba was saying, I will say, never and never and never again xenophobia in South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Member of media, my name is Saifat Abdelikidani. I'm the president of Africa Speaks. Mr. President, I came in this country when I was 19 years old from Hungary as election observer for the first democratic election in 1994. And I returned back to Hungary, and again I came for local election in 96, I think. Yeah, at that time there was a big celebration with the rugby team. And fortunately, I was invited to be in this house, in this palace. Unlike my Malawian colleague, I was sitting next to President Mandela when he invited the Tanzanian president at that time, Ali Mohoni, banquet. And the reason why I prefer to come this side, I fall in love with the people, not with the building. You know, I was in Europe, I was in the United States. But that day I remember the dance I saw, it touched my heart. And I grown up in the rural area of my country. And the same dance we dance back home. And that's the most important thing. Whoever comes to this country, sometimes we breathe peace. That's also the most important thing. And I left my family in the United States, my wife and my two children, and I told them we have to return back to Africa. And they said, no, especially my wife. I said, Africa is, you know, I born in Africa, I grown in Africa, I have to die in Africa. And I find that Africa, this is the best place to be. Two remarks in this regard, you know, thank you once again. Xenophobic attack is everywhere in Africa, but rarely reported. Our Africa Speaks, our organization, we reported this year, especially 2014, two incidents. One is in Angola, the other one is in Zimbabwe. In Angola, 25 African nationals, they were beaten to death by government security. It's not by local people. Imagine, because of lack of free media, it was not reported throughout the world. Mr. President, this country, this magnified, it's true, I mean, it happened, this incident. But it's because of free media and democracy, everyone knows about it. In Zimbabwe, our African nationals, they are denied to trade locally unless they are a partner with Zimbabweans. And they were chased out. The Nigerians, especially West African nationals, was a victim. But we reported it in our website. You can Google it. And the incident also in Angola. So these are the most important things. In most African countries it happens, but it's not reported at all. So this is a very it's an important point. The other things, this country is a last ditch for Africa, for our hope. I mean, we lost a number of things from this continent. So we don't want to lose at any time the hope which we have right now. So with this remark, this attack, I don't want to call it, xenophobic or Afrophobic, whatever it is. We have to fight it. And the little which makes us uncomfortable in this country will not shout for anybody. This is our land. We'll fight with the government official. If it is Department of Home Affairs or some other departments, will not say, will not voice to anyone else. We'll voice with them. We struggle with them. We'll correct it. And thank you for your time, Mr. President. And thank you, the media and the participants.
Mr. President. Thank you, everyone. My name is Wendosen Chaka. I'm from Ethiopia. I represent the Ethiopian Community Association in South Africa. Today, I can say that I'm very, very honored and humbled to be here with Mr. President. And I agree with my sister. I feel, my shoulder feel that the government and the people of South Africa are covering us from any danger from now. I'm saying that we cover, the media cover so many highlights and big stories for their own sake sometimes. But this kind of good things, this kind of stories must be also in the front page also. So if we want to fight a crime against humanity or this kind of problems, we also request the media to play their own part positively. Condemn the ISIS, the whatever crimes, but it's also the media must play this kind of positivity in positive ways. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon once more, Mr. President. I think we have finished our meeting. We are just reporting briefly to media. So we, as representative of our communities, our respective communities, have indeed discussed lengthily and explained and made suggestions. We have also agreed at the end of the meeting that we have to work hand in hand with government at any level to ensure that the process that we have undertaken be successful, not only for South Africans, but also for the migrants based in South Africa. Because maybe what we didn't raise during the meeting is that when we sit in our houses or we are moving around, we receive so many calls. So the outside population sees only fire in South Africa. And while some of us did not even see what was happening. So these are the contradictions that we are dealing with. And we raise also the fact, it has already been said several times, but it is important to point it out, that it is not the majority of migrants that are not making positive contributions. I am convinced by myself, and I can prove it, that since I came in South Africa in '94 and I moved into Soweto, I made a lot of personal contributions. You can take my name and test it, for instance, with the police. They will tell you. I will not go further. We have done a lot of training with the police, particularly police with Interpol. We have done a lot of exchange program with youth in Soweto. And we will continue, because we believe that if we manage to interact, because this is what also we at the migrant we have agreed, that we have to get closer and closer to the local communities and share what we are sharing to the president, so that it is the floor, the ground floor, that has to understand our problem. It should not come only with the leaders. So we have agreed that we are going to support all initiatives because it is in our interest. And it is true, xenophobia did not start in South Africa, but we have been warning. Our warning started in 2005. In my own country, it is xenophobia. It started with xenophobia, where we kick more than 3 million of neighbors out. It was done through incitement from media and political statement. This is what I raised during the meeting. And because of that experience, from the xenophobia manifestations, it becomes tribalism, because it will amplify it. So as long as it is still at the really relatively small levels, let's try to curb it. And curb it, tied it with the same rope, tied xenophobia, tied racism, tied any other related effect. This is what is our message, and this is what we stand about. I thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellency the President, thank you very much for giving us this rare opportunity. My name is Amir Sheikh. I'm representing the Somali Community Board as the chairperson, and also the Township Business Development, which is a representative body for the Pakistanis, Bangladeshi, Somalis, and Ethiopians in the townships. In short, Your Excellency, I think this was meant to report back. There is a saying in my language. They say that if a person if someone wants you to talk good of him, first of all, you show you hospitality. You feed him well, you clothe him, then you will never talk ill of the person. It is not because the president have been so kind to us that we will change our stand of being activists and will not actually say the truth of what is on the ground. But to some certain extent, we may have been misinformed. The presidency, the minister in the presidency have acknowledged that there was a communication gap between us, the foreign leadership, and them, and this have resulted us even giving misinformed or information that were not accurate. On one actually being the xenophobic attacks in 2008, of which even up to yesterday the medias were reporting that the conviction rate was less than 8%, but thanks to Minister Chevo Adebe, who is here with us, and the president, who have given actually the numbers of those who have been convicted. We are very thankful to them, and the message that we'll disseminate will be a message that despite the challenges we are facing, we have got a caring government that is ready to listen to its constituencies, irrespective of whether we are of African origin or whether we are locals. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that. The second thing is that I represent a Somali community, a community that have been perceived very badly by the South African medias, both local and internationally. Even in areas where we have no presence of actually Somalis, whenever it is reported that I'm a Somali or Somali have done this and that. And it have become a norm that even in areas of Soweto, and this is what I told Minister Lindiwe Zulu, in area where we had no presence of Somali, the media was reporting that a Somali have done this and a Somali have done this. There is ethics in the media. I did media myself, even though I did not actually practice it to the best of my ability for one reason, because I chose activism rather than at least reporting. So at least we are not asking the president to censor the media in South Africa, but to be actually patriotic and to be not biased toward actually one constituency. Your Excellency, with the conviction rate we are given, we are very happy. If South Africa could actually stood against apartheid, which was oppressive and gruesome, issues like actually Afrophobia or the so-called xenophobias will be something at least it won't actually take you days. And together working with you, we will overcome this. It is true we agreed that there are challenges and very serious challenges in South Africa. And these challenges are challenges that are emanating from actually the previously inequalities of the past and the current inequalities. We remember the history of South Africa and how our brothers, the majority, the black, were actually treated, how their rights were almost all infringed. We came actually to South Africa and we find ourselves, these are the most common people we can share a lot with. We went to the township with them, and in the township it became actually two inequals or two actually impoverished communities. And as the animal farms actually, whenever there is, what do you call it? In the animal farm they said whenever there is scarcity, the strongest survive and the weakest perish. So what we are seeing is actually similar to that, because I did not choose to go to Sandton, but rather I choose to be in Alexandra because I see people who have got commonality with me. And we have been received well, and we cannot perceive them to be xenophobic today, after giving us actually a shelter when we were seeking shelter, giving us actually a living when we did not have, because when I came with nothing. But today, at least luckily, I'm actually in a middle class level, and all because of actually my brothers and sisters in the South African townships and informal settlements. So there are challenges, and these challenges are something that we are going to address with the relevant government bodies, the interministerial task team that the actually president have formed, and the president have really assured us that if we are not going to get a joy with them, we have been given numbers, and not the hotline actually, and numbers of actually officials that we can liaise with, that will automatically talk to the president and tell that the constituency on the grounds are not happy. I think the future of Africa is very bright with this, and the prophets of doom shall not actually win this. One thing that I like to conclude is what the president said. When the colonizers actually came to our continent, and they divided Africa into actually different territories, they did not actually alienated our lands. They did not actually take our actually fertile lands only, but they also had an effect on our mind, to an extent that I, coming from an Italian colony, will actually think that the best and the most holy place to be on earth is actually to go to Rome, because that is at least where my masters come from. To the British, he will think that at least to be in London is actually heaven on earth, and to the Francophone, he will think Paris is actually everything. But that it itself have left us an impact. But for us who are Pan-Africanists and who values their continent more than anything else, South Africa is actually a country of choice. South Africa is a hope for us. And we told the president very clearly, you can actually turn the Department of Home Affairs from governance and administration and put it in actually security cluster. You can secure the borders actually with KDF members, but as an Africans, we know how to come in. We will be here, irrespective of whether we actually travel beneath actually the car. It is actually the truth, irrespective of whether we dig holes that will take us ease and actually to come to the other borders, we will be here. But what we agreed with the presidency is that to prepare more at least to receive us and to prepare more to treat us equally and in a dignified way. And we hope we will do. God bless your age on us, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will just entertain. We'll take questions. Oh, sorry. I thought you were the last one. Mamba, sorry. I thought that was the last one.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that recognition. Members of the media, my name is Joy Mabenge. I was invited because I work with the Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition's regional office here in South Africa. We spoke about so many issues, and the bulk of these issues have already been shared by my colleagues. Suffice to say that we did note that part of what colleagues from South Africa are saying are causes of xenophobic attacks. What you may call, in quotes, unfair labor practices, where foreign nationals, if I may call ourselves that, are remunerated low and therefore are the preference for capital or those that are running businesses. And we said in this meeting that it would be very important for the government of South Africa to ensure that they enforce the standardization of labor practices. But we also said that, noting that Zimbabwe might be contributing the biggest number of migrants in South Africa, probably in excess of 2.5 million, we said that it may be very important for the government of South Africa to consider what we are calling the regularization of those that may not have been regularized, so that when they compete on the labor market, they don't offer themselves cheaply and therefore contribute to what is being termed as one of the contributions to xenophobic attacks. We note and we did appreciate that the South African government has extended the special dispensation on Zimbabwe, allowing us to continue to stay here, but only 250,000 of us, of the 2.5 million Zimbabweans that are here, are documented. The bulk of those that failed to be documented in 2010 may have failed to do so because of fears of possibilities of being deported because they may not have trusted the system. So we did say that we would appreciate if the President and Cabinet would consider in the interim regularizing those whose stay is not regularized. And then we did say, as Africans, that it is high time that our leaders realize and recognize that the xenophobic attacks that we see in South Africa are at the tail end of the problem. The problem that might also need to be addressed is not necessarily sitting in South Africa. It is also sitting in other African countries, and it is very important. We did say that it is very important for African leaders to say xenophobia is not entirely and solely a South African problem, and therefore begin to introspect and contribute to resolving the challenges that keep pushing people from their countries to settle here in South Africa. And we did say that these challenges could be political, these challenges could be social, these challenges could be economic. And as Zimbabweans, we extended our appreciation to the government of South Africa for accompanying us during our times of need. And we did say that we would appreciate if the dialogue and accompaniment would continue, so that one day South Africa is not going to face the challenge of having to deal with the multitudes and millions of Zimbabweans who could otherwise, as professionals, be eking out a decent living in their own country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you were the last one this time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll take questions. I saw Sophie first, and then there was the gentleman behind Karim, and then Karim, you'll be the third one, and then Koli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sophie Mkwena from the SABC. Mr. President, President Edgar Lungu from Zambia has made a call that there should be a special summit in the region, the SADC region, to look at what transpired in South Africa. And also will be hosting heads of states and government from different parts of, in the continent in June at the AU meeting. Are we likely to see a special summit? Will you support such a summit? And the last question revolves around, in terms of, to undo the harm to our country, when we had a problem with the mining charter, South Africa went around the world to explain what the charter was all about. Are we likely to see government embarking on campaign to explain to the international community the cause and steps taken to ensure that we undo the harm?
Thank you. I think there was a gentleman behind Karim.
Good day, everyone. Good day, Mr. President. My name is Johnny Sai Maromo. I'm with the African News Agency. I just wanted to ask Mr. President, please. There are repeated calls, even in at this summit, for you to intervene in Africa, on the continent, in the bid to bring democracy on African countries and to usher human rights in respect of the rule of law. Do you not think that this is an act of xenophobia and the attacks take away the moral ground that South Africa has on the continent? And do you think your initiatives already on the continent are taken back by incidents that we saw in the recent weeks? Thank you so much.
Karen?
Okay, yeah, my one question was going to be the same to Mr. President. I'm Karine du Plessis from City Press. Is whether your initiatives in the AU, whether you think you struggle to get support for initiatives like your infrastructure, one of those initiatives that you are driving, security initiatives, do you foresee problems with that? And the next question is for Minister Khadebe. It's about the the prosecution statistics. Sunday Times reported a few months ago that the Mozambican in 2008 that was set alight, that picture that went around the world, they said his case was closed in 2010 and police prosecuted nobody for it. They said there were no witnesses and suspects, but the Sunday Times found some witnesses. Maybe could you tell us what is happening with that case, or if this is true?
Tolim Gambi from ENCA. I would like to pose a question, in fact, firstly a point of clarity from the representative that was briefing, saying that in all likelihood in countries like the DRC, Burundi, and I forget the other country, there's going to be elections, and in light of Rwanda, right, and in light of the lack of democracy there, the likelihood is that there's going to be more foreign nationals coming into South Africa. Just a question to you in how you think the South African government should deal then with the influx of those refugees coming into South Africa. Do you have any particular proposals maybe? And Mr. President, what would your government's efforts be given this particular warning that we may have an influx, again, as a result of these countries, African countries, that fail to democratize, if you will?
Thank you. Can I start with the gentleman that has been asked a question, just to come forward? I think there's one. And then the minister would come in, and then the president, if it's okay, President.
Thank you so much for your question. So during our dialogue with Mr. President, there was an issue. One of the issues is that of refugees coming in the countries. So we are looking, one of the causes why there are so many people coming here, because the lack of democracy, dictatorship in other African countries. So why people are running. And I think that South Africa is a model. It has a power. Africa. If you look in DRC, there will be election next year, Rwanda and Burundi. In all those three countries, all the three presidents, they want to extend their term. So what will happen is mean that there will be another group of people who will oppose, and because they are using the army to maintain themselves in power. And what will happen? People will start to run. And when they are running, the first country in the mind is South Africa, because the condition is good and people can able to speak their mind. So to avoid this, because it's going to happen, I think that my colleague from Somalia told me that even the South Africa put the soldiers, people are still coming. Last month I was in France, the same question was asked. They're trying to put the borders, and I told to the people when I was talking, said, listen, as long that French people, they don't have a good policy in Africa, people, they will still come. And you do have what's happening there. People are dying, but they still want to come in France. So what you are trying to say to Mr. President, that he can use his power to engage, because there are some channels where they meet in discussion, that in those countries, because we know that the president was involved in DRC, Burundi, and there are so many initiations which the president is involved, that we don't come next year where those presidents will be like to stay, because those people will come. We don't, as individuals, we don't have a measure to stop the influx as ourselves, but I think that there are something that we can be prevent before that things will happen. Thank you.
On the question from Karin Duplessis, I missed that article from the Sunday Times. My advice is that if the Sunday Times has information about those witnesses, I think they should contact the South African Police Service or even the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, so that the matter can be taken up. Because as you know, our courts are independent, so they take decisions without fear, favor, or prejudice. So if there's no information before them or witnesses before them, they might acquit. So if there's concrete information, like good citizens, they should report that to those appropriate officials in the government.
Thank you very much. Well, if the summit, of course, was called to discuss the attacks, I'm sure we will certainly participate in the summit. What I'm not certain about is it will actually warrant a summit. I'm not sure about that. There are challenges in the continent, very big challenges that have taken place, which have not caused summits in the past. I think if that could happen, I think Africa would have moved very far to attend to its issues. That if once there's a problem of this nature, of this magnitude, we can have a summit. I think there are areas where there have been really wars, and summits necessarily on specific issues has not been called. If that happened, I think we'll attend it, because then we can discuss the problems. as we met with the colleagues today, some, as you heard here, attempted to look at the causes of the refugees in the first instance leaving their countries to Africa. I would have thought that is a big underlying issue. What are the issues? So, if that happened, I don't think we'll oppose it, because we can then begin to discuss the issues of the continent differently. With regard to whether there could be a campaign to explain this to the international community, I'm sure from our point of view as South Africa, we need to find opportunities to explain what happened, because people out there who see the pictures might, for an example, have different perceptions, and I think it is important for us to explain. There are other instances, for an example, that have been shown, which we now know had nothing to do with the xenophobic attacks. It was literally crimes, like the fellow who was having a knife, the ones that finally murdered a Mozambican. They were actually robbing the man of his cigarettes and few items, and he was demanding these things back. That's what caused the problem. Some people think that that is how xenophobic attacks were. So I think we would need to find an opportunity to explain, but also to indicate that the majority of South Africans are not xenophobic. But I think the marches, peaceful march and marches that are calling for the stopping of violence, xenophobic violence, are an indication of what South Africans feel. And I think that was also felt among all of us as we met today. Well, on the issue that there are calls for the President of South Africa to intervene in the other developments in other countries, well, I don't think it's as simple as all that, because you would have countries with their own kind of identity, doing their own things. I don't think you can have South Africa acting like a police state to others. We have forums where we discuss these matters, if they are discussed, if there are problems in countries. The AU, we also have regional organizations. If such happenings call for that, as it has happened in other instances, then we act together with other countries as collectives. I don't think South Africa could just move and go and intervene as a country. It has been very, I think, good to handle these matters collectively with Africa, moving together rather than confronting one another. I think it has helped us to move to a large extent. I think Africa has moved from the period of coups. We've moved to a period where even dictators have reduced. We are dealing with issues, for an example, these days, wherein we have peer review mechanism, wherein countries are subjecting themselves, trying to be transparent in the manner in which they are handling matters. I think we have reached that point because we have not imposed any kind of solution, but we have meant or tried to discuss the matters and have countries voluntarily participating in the process of democratic system. I hope this will, in a sense, continue, that we have a way of discussing this, of persuading one another, of influencing one another towards a certain directions. I think the situation is better than what it has been in the past, because approach has been the kind of an approach of saying, let us adopt new ways of handling our citizens in the continent. On the point whether do we feel that what has happened in South Africa has affected the moral high ground, I don't think so. I think people have been worried, surprised, shocked of what has happened in South Africa. But I think also the manner in which we have handled the matters, as well as what is happening now, in a sense, indicates where we stand on these matters. It would dent the moral standing, but I don't think it will destroy it, because South Africa is a democratic country. The very fact that we have this kind of problems, these are the result of South Africa's democracy, that brothers and sisters, they move as it was really, as it emerged in the account today as we met with our brothers, that the reason why they will jump all other countries and come to South Africa is because they believe there is a protection in South Africa arising out of our constitution and our laws, and therefore they feel they are protected in South Africa. So the moral high ground will still remain. I think this will be taken as an incident that has happened, but South Africa, I think, is not shy to deal with it, and even to say this will never happen again. And this is what the colleagues were saying, that we have a country when if things go wrong, it has a constitution and the laws that it exercises to address those kind of issues. For an example, if the foreign nationals in South Africa are attacked, South Africa stands up and stop it and deal with those people, arrest them, prosecute them, convict them, send them to jail, so that there are laws that deal with this. I think, comparatively speaking, South Africa will still maintain its moral high ground. With regard to the issue that given what has happened, will the matter of South Africa leading the infrastructure in Africa be affected? No, not at all. I think all what this helps to do is for us to be conscious of the underlying issues in the continent that might, in a sense, not allow the issues to flow properly if some matters are not addressed. But insofar as the infrastructure is concerned, I think all countries are keen that we need to have an infrastructure. All countries are keen that we must reach a stage where the question of borders is not an issue, where there is inter-trade among countries. We are integrating economic regions, so there is a move forward, which I think is going to help as a catalyst to actually address other issues wherein people look at others as people coming from other side. We discuss a great deal the issue of Pan-Africanism. Some of the colleagues who made the contributions made very passionate plea that we should exercise our own Pan-Africanism as Africans, even stop calling others foreign national. There's no foreign somebody here. We need to be together. It's a matter we all agreed we need to work towards achieving. Well, the other issue, whether will South Africa deal with the influx if there are problems in other countries? Well, this is what we always do. If such things happen and if people run away, because as one colleague indicated here, it is a matter of life and death. So if they run away from danger, South Africa will always be there to ensure that they are accommodated under the international law that says if people run away from danger, each country is obliged to handle people with care, to protect them as an international obligation. But even if there was no international obligations, I think South Africa will always receive brothers and sisters and protect them. So that would not change. We are not making any comment about people who come from those countries who have their own views. We are just saying if there is any eventuality of that, we will not change our policy towards receiving our brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end of this media briefing. The dinner is still available, so we urge you to come and have lunch, supper. We nearly went into breakfast. Thank you very much.